Welcome to Latent Treasures, a uniquely uplifting podcast filled with inspiring guests to brighten your week. Our show takes inspiration from a lesser-known quote from C.S. Lewis. What we want is not more little books about Christianity, but more little books by Christians on other subjects, with their Christianity latent. While I love books, this is 2020. And let's face it, audio is a lot easier to produce. But you are more than welcome to think of our little podcast as a bunch of little books about various topics, lived by ordinary people. But these people are quite extraordinary in the way their faith drives them and fuels their journey. Journeys on which they're making profound impacts on everyone around them. We hope you'll be blessed by these stories and recognize that inside each of us is the ability to be similarly extraordinary. If you like our show, please subscribe. And if you find any individual show special, please like it and share it freely. Have you ever thought you knew someone pretty well, then later found out they had this massive hidden talent? Well, our guest today is Ramy Antoun. Ramy was both a classmate and a teammate of mine back in college. And I knew he was a cool and funny and entertaining guy back then, but I had no idea that he was a very capable musician. I knew he liked music and spent some time with others jamming a little bit for fun, but that was about it. Fast forward about a decade, and I found out he was touring with some major names in music on the drums, and had become a very sought-after talent in many studio, live, and production settings. We dive into part one of our interview with Ramy, learning what the early stages of his career were like, and discovering how some of his experiences behind the drums actually led to a massive life change. Ramy also mentors musicians, works as a creative director, has put out his own music with another writer, and has established a high-end drum manufacturing business. You'll quickly learn he's no stranger to hard work, and his positive energy and love for people have been blessing others for a long time. Keep an eye on this guy, check out his killer drums at andfdrumco.com, and be sure to follow him on Instagram. Not only will you be entertained, but you'll also get some amazing cooking ideas and some quality cigar insights. Remember, you can see all of our detailed show notes, including all of Ramy's contact information, on our website, bethechurch.org. There you'll also learn about our show's two artists, Mary Rogers and Cheyenne Summers. They provide our music and cover art respectively, and we know you'll enjoy more of their art linked in those show notes. But now, without further ado, please welcome Ramy Antoun. Well, welcome to our show, Ramy. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Chad.
Hey, I appreciate you accepting this invitation. I'm a little, as long as I've known you, I'm still, the realities of what your career has become and the things you've done along the way, there's this feeling of almost starstruckness. Because I know you're a regular guy, and you just put it out there and do your best every day. And it's just cool to see how phenomenal it's become.
Thanks, man. It's crazy to see you and think probably the last time we hung out was on the football field in college.
Yeah, seriously. I don't even want to count the years, 20-something.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. But no, your discography is amazing. Just getting to even find out, I didn't even know, as I was kind of doing a little bit of homework, that you were involved in so many soundtracks as well. So
it's been a fun journey, man.
You've been a very busy man.
Really blessed.
Yeah. So, not shockingly, but you were born actually in Egypt. When did you come over here?
My family migrated in '76. I was 3 years old.
Okay.
And so I grew up in the States, in California. I spent my summers in Egypt for a season of childhood.
Really?
Which was great.
Yeah.
And then I think right about end of junior high into high school, I stopped, spending my summers there.
Was it starting to become like a political climate reason? I know the dynamics changed a bit. Okay, just
no. It was purely, athletics. Like I was starting to get into football, obviously, and you had 2 days in the summer, so you had to be here and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, that dictated what, the ceasing to go in the summer was purely for sports and wanted to be with my friends.
Yeah. Well,
The-
can't be can't be good weather in Egypt in the summer. It's got to be hot. I
I
don't know.
mean, I'm living in Austin now, so
Yeah,
it's
similar.
not much different. I must be a glutton for the heat.
That's awesome.
Um, but yeah, it was nice. My family's from Alexandria, which is a coastal
Yeah.
city, so we spent a lot of time on the beach in the summers. It was beautiful. I loved it.
Yeah.
But yeah, born there and then raised in California.
Do you get to go back much still, or is that something you still enjoy?
Last time I went to Alexandria was in '96
Okay.
after I graduated college. Yeah, haven't been back since.
Yeah.
I plan on taking my boys and my wife at some point. They've never been, um, but obviously right now that those plans are completely out of the question.
Yeah. At the
Any
moment,
travel
for sure.
plans for the most part, yeah.
Yeah.
But someday,
Yeah.
someday I'd love to take them.
It's always been one of the places, not necessarily, I don't know anything about Alexandria specifically, but Egypt's have been on the top of my list for so long. And I hear mixed things about whether or not, it's a good idea in general with, some of the political unrest, but man, just the history alone,
Yeah,
just amazing.
I've got my mom moved back there
Oh, really?
about 2 years ago, so she splits her time between Alexandria and then here with us.
That's awesome.
Kind of does the Christmas winter season here, and then the rest of the time there.
Wow, that's very cool.
And
And
she loves it.
yeah, obviously, I was going to say she
Loves
must
it.
love it. Very
Yeah,
cool. Because both of your parents are from there.
yeah. I'm 100% Egyptian.
Yeah, very, very cool. And your dad somewhat explains your, life path. Your dad was deeply involved in music too, right?
Yeah, he was a musician in Alexandria, and frankly, he was just fine staying there and continuing to play music. But he had strict slash wealthy parents, and he was one of six brothers, one of six boys, and so their mission. This is old world, right? Their mission was, you know, you get a career, you get married, you raise a family. And my grandfather added, and you're moving to the States because there's not a financial future here. So my grandfather moved all his sons as soon as they were married to the States.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he came after. He was last. But so yeah, my dad, had to take on a career. He didn't really know how to pursue music here in the States. And so he was a great salesman. He sold insurance for a season and then got into real estate, you know.
Yeah. Very cool. So you guys probably were quite close.
Uh we were close for a season.
Okay.
I think my life mirrors probably millions and millions of other broken family lives where there's divorce and chaos and just unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah. I am in the
But
same
we,
boat,
yeah,
so I
we
understand.
music, yeah, music was definitely a connecting component to our relationship. I think outside of that, it was a difficult run, man.
Okay. Hey, that's fair. I can understand that completely. How about
Yeah,
with your mom? I'm just to a degree digging in because I'm always curious what kind of people with their foundations, start to create all these things and set them in motion. So were things a lot
yeah.
different than with your mom, or did you have a lot of other outside influences?
My mom wasn't musical in any way, but she kept me and my sister basically together and provided for us. And then once I was, I think, 14 or so, I was working as well, and that was an interesting dynamic. You know, I, half of me was still very much immersed in the culture of my ancestry. Where a man of the house has to do this, this, and that. And so I very much wore that until I knew just the full dynamic of where that came from and the good things behind that and the not so good things. And so it was an interesting journey, man. But I at that time at 14, I felt responsible to provide for my mom, my sister, alongside my mom. And
Yeah.
so I had a very early like get work done ethic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that explains it. You definitely have an entrepreneurial spirit in general. So it makes sense
I
that it
love it.
started that early. What were some of those early things that you did? You mentioned you've been like, involved in business since an early age. What were some of those early iterations?
Yeah. Well, specifically at 14, I was working at Subway, so I wouldn't say that was entrepreneurial, but it was very educational. Um, my first entrepreneurial venture was out of college. I started a record company,
Okay.
and at the time, people still bought hard discs,
Yeah.
CDs. So we did really well, and I was able to sell it to a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, which is great. And then I had a booking agency, so I would book bands and a variety of different talent for corporate events. I found that there was a good niche there, and
That's
kind
awesome.
of built that up. And one thing led to another, man. Just tons of stuff in the music business.
How did you, in college, college was outside Los Angeles, so we're relatively near a massive music scene, especially at the time.
Yeah.
How did you find those people to represent or to produce with your record label?
Well, there's a theory. I don't know if all entrepreneurs believe this. I definitely believe it. Man, if you're supposed to do something, those things find you. And if you're a real entrepreneur pursuing something that you're supposed to pursue, you're going to have a really keen intuition on the things that you need to kind of dive into.
Yeah.
And so I didn't go looking. I ended up what happened was I basically let go of this initial path to law school, and I quit my job working at the time in Ventura as a probation officer and jumped in a van with guys and played music. I was like, I need to break away from all this, and I need to just maybe it was taking a break in my mind. I was like, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to play music because I've never really played out much other than with my family. Most people in college didn't even know I was a musician. I mean, it was just that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And so I decided to pursue that, and you get about 7 or 8 months into hanging out with your buddies, drinking, playing clubs, and it's if you have any sense of responsibility, it starts to get old quick. And reality sets in, and so in that moment for me it was okay. Well, I see an opportunity here. I'm starting to understand how these bands get paid and what's going on. Let's organize it a bit. And so that was the first label, and I was a band I was in that was on the label, and I added a few other bands that were already playing in our circuit
Hmm.
that I thought were doing well and had potential for monetizing. And so that's really how it happened.
That's awesome.
Just identifying opportunity and then jumping in.
Yeah, yeah. Now, did you was it just the label relative to the marketing side, or were you recording them? Were you doing mastering with them? Like,
It was marketing and sales.
gotcha. Okay.
That is really my strength is marketing and sales. Um, and I hope one of my strengths is seeing it before it exists, but knowing that it needs to, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, marketing and sales. So these were bands that already had CDs, already had product. They were already playing a circuit. I just helped them make more money at the same things they were already doing,
Yeah. That's cool.
basically. Yeah.
So I mean, that was obviously before the digital era took over and the entire industry went through this massive shift,
Yeah, big time.
right? Um, I'm just curious your own perspective of that transition and where you even see the music industry potentially moving. Yeah, I've got a
That's a
bit of
great question.
insight. I can explain to you later, but yeah, I'm totally curious from the inside as a musician, right, and as somebody who was working on the production side and promotion side. You're boy, how did that everything? There's so many questions I could ask in there. That's why I'm stuttering
Sure.
right now. But how did that affect the art? How did that affect the business? Uh, you know, boy, obviously people have it's a different monetary model now entirely. So,
Yeah.
what was that experience like?
Man, I think one thing I've learned so far, I haven't been on this earth more than half a century, but that humans, especially artists, are very resilient, and as long as there's a demand for art, uh, artists will find a way to fulfill that demand. And so, yeah, that my 20 or so years directly in the industry, I saw a complete change and complete reformation. It's crazy, but I also saw opportunities in the new methods as much as I did the old. They just look different.
Yeah.
And so, and most musicians, most creative people in general, are able to be very flexible and fluid. And a lot of the art that I like is very reflective of what's happening in that specific day and age in that time. And so capturing things as they change and highlighting them, even teaching about them in creative ways through song and film and stuff.
Yeah.
All that is creativity. All that finds a way. So right now, if you look at it, think about most information now is consumed visually. You get Instagram, you get Facebook, and yes, you have to read. There is copy, but if you don't have a picture or a video, nobody's even gonna pay attention to it. When was the last time you just posted something that you wanted to say without having to turn it into a slide with colors and words on it? Because nobody reads that stuff if it's just words.
Yeah.
So creativity literally is how we communicate now.
No,
So
absolutely.
it's not me making a film. Maybe it's not me making a record, but maybe it's me providing a song that is communicating a message through some visual elements, and it's all on Instagram
Yeah.
and various ways to monetize it. But I just think creativity is it's kind of like when I'm walking on our property and I see plants growing through concrete cracks. I'm
Just
like,
finds a
there's
way.
nothing I can do to make that stop.
Right.
It's redirected, but there it is.
Yeah.
And I've got to if it's a weed, I've got a weed killer or yank it out and stuff and every week because it's not going away.
Yeah. For sure. I know a couple people who have had phenomenal success. Just I don't even know if it was their intent, but however their market ended up being, intros to shows on TV, right, or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
have done, I guess I can't specifically say how well, but they've done quite well for themselves, and just that's nobody has any clue who they are, but they've got the music that's the intro behind the start of a show, right, and
Yeah.
just
That's sync license. Sync licensing is huge.
yeah, I had no idea. I can only imagine the sides of the business I don't know about. Um, obviously, touring became more important for the live artists because they're making less revenue from plays per se.
Yep.
Now, I mean, they're going through an entirely new, like you said, adjustment, and tours are done, right? So I've
Yep.
seen people doing drive-in theater shows, and people are going to concerts in their car and staying
Yeah.
inside them, right? So it'd be
It's
very
crazy.
interesting to see, how things continue to play out. Do you have any idea of your own perspective of where the industry might go?
Yeah, I'm banking on one of it with a new venture.
Okay.
Um, but for the most part, it's what's happening now. So you got to think more digital.
Yeah.
You've got to think about how you can promote slash provide an experience for someone in the digital domain.
Yeah. So I think everybody grows up enjoying whatever kind of music they enjoy and or diversity of music they enjoy, and you had the exposure to your dad and his passion for music as well, but who are some of your biggest influences that just made this something that consumed you?
Well, so initially, man, it was radio, and that's a really broad statement. But when I'd come home from school, I blasted the radio. At the time in LA, it was Kiss FM 102.7, Kiss FM. They played all the pop songs. And that, man, I just blast it, and my drums were positioned right in front of the speakers, and I would play. I was the drummer for every song that came on the radio, from it was Michael Jackson to, I mean, it was everybody. It was everybody at the time. Sting, the Police, like all of it.
Yeah. Now,
So
did you
that
try to copy or did you just freestyle with it as long as you were in the groove?
I would copy general idea, and then I'd have my moments. But I definitely wanted to be that guy playing that groove.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, that was very educational. Now, if you ask me, like what I love listening to, I love the 1930s, 1940s era of music. I never play it. I've never really, but that music transports me still. Uh, and I know everybody's got an era of time they would love to be transported, like that movie Midnight in Paris. Everybody's got an era of time in a specific area of the world that they'd love to have lived.
Yeah. Or experience at
From
least. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So that 30s to 40s era music across the board, I love
I
that
was going to say,
era.
yeah, there's so many genres that stand out to me in the back of my head when you say that. That's very cool. Um, all right. So you decided, after you decided to let, law school go and probation officer go, that never really turned around again. Those doors kept opening. And or you
Uh,
forced them open.
that's probably closer to the truth. Yeah. Um, I think what the door that opened was for me was more about passion around the career. Like that's the door that opened. The rest was all a lot of hard work and kind of in a very stubborn commitment to make it work. Because it's one of those industries where everybody would love to see you succeed in it and be like, yeah, that's my son, but nobody wants to encourage you to do it. Like that's not a real thing, you know?
Yep.
So you're living this like very schizophrenic encouragement, discouragement situation. And so you just got to decide, all right, this is what I'm doing. I either do this or I end up homeless on the street. If I'm willing to accept that, really accept that pathway, and that's it. There's no plan B. You just do it.
Yeah.
And if you fail, well, you made the decision as an adult to do this thing and it didn't work. You can reassess at that point. But I think that was the only level of failure that would have made me reconsider my choice was, if I would end up, and not that I didn't, not that I mean, I did definitely slept in my car for a little season, but that wasn't enough. That wasn't homeless to me.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about that because I think that's an important point. I'd recently heard an interview that Morgan Freeman had done where he's like, if you're an actor, you're an actor, right? And it doesn't matter if you've got to work graveyard as a janitor somewhere. If that's
Yeah.
what you are, do it, period. It doesn't matter if you have garbage rolls at community theater, keep doing it. What were some of your highs and lows those first 10 years, 5 years maybe, right? That you pushed through? Like paint that picture a little more graphically, like you said, the little
Yeah.
phase you slept in the car, but I'm sure it's a roller coaster. You have, some prosperity for a bit and then dry, right? And you're back
Yeah.
in the desert season. How did that look for the early part?
Yeah. I mean, you wake up in the morning on somebody's couch. You've got about $4, and you've got your little places that you can get fed for $1.30, $1.40, and you are excited at being able to eat, and then you're completely discouraged at the fact that that's where your life is in that moment. And you're a college grad, all the stuff that your parents, you're a college grad, you have these abilities, and look at you now. So you're your own worst critic, always. Um, those first 5 years were very, very difficult, man. You talk about swallowing pride, that's out the window.
Oh yeah.
But exactly what Morgan Freeman, you just shared what he said to the T. When I officially said to myself, all right, I'm going to be a drummer, I'm going to be a session guy, that's what I want to do. I was working all kinds of odd jobs. And if somebody asked me, "Hey man, so what do you do?" I'm a session musician. Oh, cool. Well, tell me about some of the sessions. Well, I haven't done any yet, but that's what I am. And they thought I was kidding, and I was dead serious. Like, I'm that person that I'm going to be, hopefully sooner than later. And meanwhile, I'm working, schlepping stuff here. I'm tuning these drums for this guy. I'm doing whatever I can. I don't care to make this work. But it's a very humbling experience. Uh,
I feel
it's
you.
very humbling, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're
Did
stripped of everything, pretty much.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, brought to my knees in prayer many times along my path as well. So,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
how did you ever experience a time where you just like you almost let it go?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, every day. Every day there's a moment where you're like, "I'm done." No, you're not. You're good. Okay. And there's definitely seasons much that are just a different level of harsh, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
And usually in that time, I do firmly believe that usually in that time, if you're supposed to do what you're doing, somebody will come alongside and say something.
I'm I'm evaluating it to a degree from a different angle because I think there's so much value in that experience, right? That everybody who's
Absolutely.
developed something from nothing has to go through that hardship, especially if it's something that you really want, right? Life is
Yes.
not a peachy keen journey. Um, in the back of my mind, I'm also evaluating it from this idea of if we were if we were watching somebody pursue that, right? Is there a way, if we're aware of somebody chasing that, like truly willing to put up with whatever misery, right? To keep
Yeah.
pursuing, is there a way we can come alongside them, maybe cushion their blow a little bit without, or is it, I'm just wondering,
That's an
is it
interesting
is
question.
it more important that they go through it, or is there ways to identify a, I think the creative arts in general, I try every time I can to bring light to people who are working their butt off, trying to, make their dream come true, and they're not going to give up, period, and give exposure to them or, whatever. Because I think it's almost one of those few things that keeps this world sane, frankly, right? Um, I just wonder, like I said, from the outside, from a position of potentially generosity for others around them, are there ways if it's a parent with a kid who's struggling with it, or where's that balance? You have any insight on that? I'm just curious.
Man, I mean, the only insight I can offer really there is that I don't think it's different than any time somebody is pursuing anything and needing encouragement. Like what I'm hearing you ask is, does do can we be encouraging? Yes, we can be. We should be encouraging to everybody in pursuit of anything that their heart is pursuing. Right.
Yeah, I think a
Um,
bit more than just encouraging though, because obviously encouragement's important. Versus, like you said, there's that line of "I want to see you succeed," but this is an unrealistic dream, right?
yeah. Right.
um, and encouragement versus, "Hey, we're gonna pad your account with a couple of grand a month," which might diminish their drive, so to speak, right? Like, oh, it's not as urgent that I find my next
Yeah.
10 gigs, right? Or whatever.
That's interesting. I mean, whenever it comes down to money, I look at it from a business perspective. And so, if you're going to invest money, then there should be a plan and a return on investment path. There should be milestones that essentially trigger additional funding or remove funding. I mean, it should be very structured. I am not a believer of just throwing money at art because it's cool or
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that doesn't actually work. So creatives, just like any other venture, there needs to be some structure. And I for years have mentored and worked with artists basically trying to nail this specific, you know, component of their industry down. Like, hey, I get that you want to be free to write and free to paint, but for this project, this is your deadline, this is your date, and this is your focus for this specific project. You can say I don't want it. That's totally fine. Or you can say, cool, I'm going to try and do that, and I'm going to hold you to it. I'm the same way. I always needed to have deadlines, and if you really wanted me to turn something in, I needed deadlines.
Yeah.
And the other thing with creativity, especially, artists are their own worst critic, is it's okay that I'm turning in today the best I could do today. Hopefully that's not the best I'll ever do. And I'm believing that next year, whatever I do is going to be even better than this. And so that's the thing too. You got to kind of pry away that expectation of, no, whatever I do right now is the best ever. I'm never going to do better than this. Nah, that's not true. As long as you're evolving, you will.
I was going
But
to
you
say,
got to let go of
is
this
that
now.
a common attitude in art?
Yes, I will pick a thing apart before anybody gets to see it because it has to be perfect. But perfect is not perfect. And so
Yeah,
you
just the
at some
natural
point have to
evolution.
put it out.
Yeah, because the
You
natural
want
evolution
feedback.
of growth, right? Whatever
Yeah.
that could be, right? Being able to, even with somebody like singing, right? There are times people, you can know when you'll see a live performer, right? And maybe it's somebody you've followed for a long time and you've seen them perform completely, what do you call it, in the zone or whatever. They're just in it, like fully, versus, I don't want to say mailing it in, but they're just not on, right? Or they're
Yeah.
maybe distracted by other life stuff going on. And it's a entirely different. But also, following any artist, same concept. As you watch them through their career, they absolutely get better. Not necessarily just technically,
Sure.
but just in their depth, what their life and growth experiences brought to the table for them. I think that's, I and like you say, regardless of industry, whether that's creative arts or otherwise, I think everybody just keeps getting better if they're pursuing what they love, right? Like,
Yeah. But the driving factor behind that specific mentality, though, is that, you know, as creatives, we are in a undervalued occupation. So no matter how great I create something, you know, it's like less than 1% of those things that people create actually go on to bring the the amount of success needed to build a career on.
right?
That's an extremely low percentage.
Yeah,
If less than 1% of law school graduates became attorneys, we would not have a lot of law schools.
very true. Yeah,
So think about that. I mean, that's an interesting space. And so yeah, am I going to overanalyze every single thing I do to make sure I'm as close to getting into that 1%? Absolutely. But at some point, I gotta put it out there to even have a shot.
yeah.
Uh, so
Is
it's an interesting career path.
yeah. Are there other people who are like, well, I don't know, I'm just going to throw a whole bunch of, just create a whole bunch and
Yeah, absolutely.
throw it all against
You
the
got
wall and wait for my
Yeah, you got
1%?
all personalities, man. It's all over the place. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Uh, I think those that are very prolific, they're not as tight gripped on the art that they put out. So you'll see a lot of stuff go out, and yeah, look, man. If there was a set formula for success in any creative venture and creative industry, you'd have a lot more successes. But
yeah,
you can minimize risk based on all the information that you gather that dictate X, Y, and Z, whatever. You can put it in a spreadsheet and kind of deduce what the most successful formulas are, but you still can't make it successful.
yeah. That's awesome. Sorry, I love digging into that part because I think that early stage is so impactful in how it molds. Right? Did it? did you, well, let me ask it this way. You called yourself a session drummer,
Yeah.
and eventually you ended up doing a fair amount of touring.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm not an expert, so I apologize if this is a really stupid question. That's not the same, right? Like
No,
the
so
session is
I
like a
actually,
studio drummer, right?
yeah, so I was a studio drummer. So 6 months after I moved to LA, I became a studio drummer. And I actually did not tour. Um, my first tour was in 2003.
Okay.
Um, but prior to that, it was all studio work, and I knew that I had fallen into this really small circle. And if I left town, I wouldn't be that first call for producers anymore with my circle, And so
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't leave. I loved my job. I would work and make records all day, and then go have a great meal and hang out with some friends. And it was a dream, man. I loved it.
And so, just to paint the picture, how long was it from college to when you started getting consistent session work?
I would say so. College was '96, graduated. Really consistent session work started end at like '99, around 1999.
Okay,
Yeah,
not too bad.
yeah.
Very
It
cool.
seemed very bad,
Oh
but
yeah. No, yeah, a year can go on and on and on,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So 3 years of schlepping it.
That's pretty good though. I mean, I don't know what the
Yeah.
average is, but that doesn't sound industry wide. That sounds relatively successful.
Well, yeah, and it wasn't like in '99 I was buying new cars or houses. It wasn't. It was just like, oh, cool. I can rent a
Sustaining
room
yourself.
and eat sometimes what I want.
Yeah,
So it was definitely from '99 to maybe 2001, 2002 was kind of a steady growth of sessions. And in that time also was writing songs with buddies and writing for TV and film, just pitching, not actually. And then, towards the end of 2001, 2002, started landing a bunch of stuff. And yeah.
that's
And I would
awesome.
say from 2002 to 2010 was really, the biggest successes, I would say, in all areas, whether it's recording or performing live or writing, all of it, producing. I was a very successful, the most I'd ever seen.
Yeah, and I was obviously encourage everybody to check out your resume. It's pretty impressive. But of all the people that are part of that list, not to diminish anybody that you might not name, but who are some of the like greatest experiences with, or are you
Sure.
allowed to just say?
Oh, that's fine. I would say one of my favorite uh, stage experiences. I was with Seal for about 4 years, and the band. I was the youngest guy in the band. That was my first tour. It was incredible. I mean, it was 5-star everything, but the musicians I was playing with were just unbelievable players, and I just felt and especially in the beginning, I just kept thinking, what the heck am I doing on this stage? Do they know? Do they know that I'm not near as good as these guys are? Like, but it was phenomenal, man. I just musically, it was another level. And then I would say my absolute favorite musical project that I was part of was a band that I had with my music partner Sid. It was a band called Gold Spot, and till this day, man, I look back at the record that we made and just I love what we did together. He's now a very successful composer for This Is Us, which is a TV show,
Yeah,
and a handful of massive shows. He's one of the top composers in LA right now for TV and film, and rightly so, man. He's an absolute brilliant artist musician, and he and I just we spent so much time writing and creating music together, and we were signed to Universal for a major deal, and it was just a very, very special musical season.
yeah,
He's still one of my dearest friends. Yeah.
that's awesome. And I venture to guess that it's not. how do I say this? I imagine when you're first on stage with those performers, right? As a young guy, first tour, in awe, and not to say that those artists weren't phenomenal,
Completely in awe.
right? But I
Yeah.
mean, you don't earn that spot without being phenomenal yourself. In retrospect, I don't- not to make you not sound humble, but in reality, because everybody would be like you said, in awe, like I don't belong here. They're gonna wake up and be like, why did we pick this guy? Right? Everybody's gonna have those
Yeah.
thoughts in the back of their head. But looking back at it now, can you say, not that you haven't improved or developed since then, but I'm sure you fit that, right? Like you deserve to be there.
Uh, what in retrospect, when I look back, as one thing I've learned over and over again, there needs to be a harmony in people for it to really be a harmony that resonates on stage. And I really had a great harmony with Seal and my musician, like my co-musicians. And I think that resonated on stage. There was a very unique relational dynamic that brought us together. And the same I'll say with Sid Goldspot. He and I he was raised Indian, from an Indian family, both Eastern families, and we incorporated a lot of Eastern concepts in our music. We could relate to a lot of Eastern cultural things, like you're going to be a doctor or an attorney. That's it. And here we are, we're both doing music, and so we had we have such a beautiful relationship that when we made music together, it was just that much better. And so collectively as a whole, yes, it made me a better player to play with those guys. I played up. And so the guy you saw on stage was playing up to those guys that are playing next to him and making sure that he was doing everything he can to make them feel that they made the right decision.
Yeah.
But did I deserve it? Hell no. No, man. I didn't pay my dues in that way that a lot of guys did. I didn't go to music school. I didn't even audition for that gig. I got a call, and then I was, in a practice room practicing the songs for a week with the band, and then on the road for 4 years. I've never done an audition.
Yeah.
And I was in a business where everything was audition.
Okay.
And I never did. I never did audition for anybody. So
Well,
did I deserve that? No, I did not deserve that.
yeah. I guess, and I'm a complete outsider. I have no idea. I get the paying dues idea, the no audition idea, but obviously you've got to have some significant talent to be able to hang or even fake it.
I would agree with that. And the reality there is I responsible for the talent? No.
I hear you.
I mean, the truth be told, right?
You put the time in too, though. It
but
doesn't happen
I
on
didn't.
its own.
I didn't wake up and turn on a switch and go, okay, you're going to be a drummer.
Yeah.
Let's teach you how to play drums. It's like, no, I started playing. I was 3.
Yeah.
So I didn't even know better. It was a gift, right? I got a gift.
Yeah.
Like the parable of the talents. What are you going to do with it? And I felt like for many years through college, I was the guy that took it and buried it, and actually did nothing with it. And then when I left school, left my job and all that, and it was like, all right, now I'm going to do something with it. So yeah, I made a decision and I worked hard, but it did exist prior to me doing that.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we deserve much. I think we get gifts and I think we can work for the rest. But the idea of entitlement, that's a dangerous one.
Yeah, no, I certainly didn't mean it in that context.
No, I know you didn't. This is something I've wrestled myself with always. Like, hey, I know you think you deserve that, but you don't. So back off, get the job done, keep your head down, and whatever ways you've been wronged, you think you've been wronged. I'm talking to myself, right? Just suck it up.
Yeah, well, and at the same time, you're sitting, like you said, in an industry where maybe 1% of the work you do has value, right? So it's a quite crazy dichotomy. I can only imagine the psychology bills you're going to have late in life.
Yes,
but
truth.
No, that's really cool, and and you've always struck in me to be somebody who understands the blessing, right, of the gifts of your experiences.
Oh God, yes.
Right, and Um, as you're talking, I'm also just thinking and wondering what was, you know, for a person who, has a strong faith, what was tour life like? Not obviously every tour is the same and not every, you know, tour is a bunch of debauchery all day long, but what was tour life like? Was it hard to remain, close, even just friendships wise, right? 4 years. That's a long stretch to
Yeah.
primarily be touring. How did that affect the rest of your life? How did that impact your faith? How did your faith impact that tour? You want to touch on
Yeah.
any of that?
Oh man, there's a lot there. So, um, when before that tour, I would say about 8 months before I went on the road, I had connected with a church community in Malibu, the Malibu Vineyard, and it was just I just connected with some peers, and it was rad. And I kind of found my way back to faith in a different way.
Well, that church was exploding then too. Like that was on
Yeah,
fire.
yeah,
I know
yeah.
a
So
lot of people connected to that fire. Let me tell you,
okay,
it's partly
cool.
where a lot of my fire came from indirectly.
All right, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, that's where I did church, and at the time I had committed for a season to celibacy, which is a unique dynamic in our business. And then I went on tour, and all three guys are either fully committed or married, or four guys, all the other four guys, and then there's me, the single guy, who's committed to be celibate, right? And this is a SEAL tour, man. This isn't like rock music. This is very groove sensual. Like it's
Yeah.
so there were lots of hilarious conversations on the bus. But in the end of it, and by the way, I didn't succeed in 4 years. I definitely had failure moments. I would love to say that, man, I pulled it off. No, I didn't, but I tried. And it was actually in the last of those 4 years when I met my wife, and it was in the season where I really committed to celibate, like for sure. And so that was an interesting season. And but my church buddies had a lot to do with keeping me sane. Here's the thing, man. You're uprooted from what you would normally call home, where there's some accountability, hopefully, if you're in a group, bros, whatever. So you're uprooted. Then you're given tons of resources, and you only work about 2 hours a day. And then you're thrown into all these romantic countries all over the world. And you've got to figure out what you're doing with 22 hours. Try not to spend the money that you're making because you want to save. Trying not to get into some really bad situations, which most musicians do. And so, what do you do? Like, how do you combat this thing? And for me, man, I fell in love with learning how to cook, and so I'd visit with chefs all the time and spend the day, in their kitchen watching them prep and exchange for tickets or passes to the shows and stuff like that. I liked cigars more as just understanding how to collect, and some of my collection of cigars goes back almost 100 years, which is crazy. It's
Wow.
it's a really beautiful, just things like that to kind of keep you from falling into heavy drugs, like full debauchery in 10,000 different ways.
Yeah.
You got to do something, man, to keep your sanity. It's a really difficult. I would tell my wife now, but my fiance at the time, I was like, honey, when I come home from a tour, I want to show up like I'm at the airport. I come in and there's a full parade celebrating the fact that I went another tour without literally just, you know, everything and anything.
Yeah. Going
Like
off
I
the
did
deep
it.
end. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not addicted to drugs. I didn't fall into like multiple sexual partners. Like I did it.
Seriously. Where's the ticker tape
because
parade?
well, that's the thing. I would say, you know what? No normal man in any normal job could endure 22 hours of this, because you're in a city, maybe you're in a city for 3 days, right? And you play a show the first day. Well, all those people saw you that day. So if you go out and walk around, you're going to run into people. and then there's going to be expectations and so forth and so on. And that's a daily thing,
Yeah.
daily.
Yeah.
So
Boy.
it's a lot of, yeah. I don't
And
know,
man,
man.
at that age, I would have. Ooh, that would have been bad.
Oh, it was
I was
crazy,
not
and I
mature at that
definitely
age.
had
Let's put it
seasons.
that
I
way.
had seasons.
Like that was.
Yeah, man. I you know
That,
I have always had a deep connection with my faith, and I have sinned like the best of them, but always felt the tug afterwards. Like that was kind of stupid, man. Like you just did that thing. You know better. I get why you did it, but that was really dumb. You might want to rethink that next time.
yeah.
Internal conversations
Yeah.
daily. So that's been an interesting path.
That's cool. Were other guys in the tour also pretty deeply rooted in the faith, or
Lots of great conversations about it. I wouldn't say anyone was against it or playing at a church or it was just
yeah?
lots of great conversations.
That's cool. Very
Yeah,
very cool. So you mentioned that you met your wife on that last year. Was that a time when you were back home? Did you meet her on
yeah,
tour?
no,
Okay.
yeah. We met at home. I had come home from a tour, and I was connecting with some friends to go out and just kind of blow off some steam. We hadn't seen each other in like 3 months, and we were waiting for one of my friends to get off work, so we are just sitting at TGIF having a snack and like a drink or whatever. And long story short, she was a designated driver for a group of girls that was there for a birthday party, and we just talked for like 2 hours. And I think a month later, we went on our first date. Our second date was church at the Vineyard with all my friends and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think we spent every day together since. Got
Wow.
engaged about a year and a half. Wait, got engaged 9 months later, married a year and a half after that.
Very very cool. And I've got two
Yeah.
kids.
Two kids, 9 and 11, two boys.
Very very nice. And did that impact, or when did you decide you wanted to kind of pull back from performing?
So when I got to Austin, I definitely was very much still immersed in everything because I was Gold Spot was on Universal Music. That's actually why I left the Seal tour was because my band was signed to Universal, and so I had to spend 6 months back and forth from the UK promoting our music. And we had just moved to Austin. I built a studio here, and I got involved in a church here. And I say this all the time, but jokingly, I would play golf with our pastors at our country club out there, the golf club, and they were like, "Hey, so what are you doing right now?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I'm getting ready for the next season of music. I don't know yet." "Well, we need help with our arts team. You want to?" Yeah, I was like, "I'll help in any way." Well, like, no, we actually want to hire someone. I was like, "No, absolutely not. I don't do that. I've never worked at a church. It's not my thing, but I'll help in any other way I can." Like, okay, well, just give it a go. Help us, volunteer if you want, whatever you want. Anyway, one thing led to another, and I ended up coming on staff as a arts pastor for this really big church. And at first, it was planting one campus, and then kind of testing this model, whatever, and then eventually overseeing the whole department, the arts, pastoring the arts team, essentially.
Okay.
So that was like 5 years, man.
Five
Of
years. Wow.
yeah, and in that season of actually seeing music impact in a whole new way, um, like seeing the full healing power of music, I guess is one way to say it, and then seeing the full healing power of community. It was like I don't really want to get on the stage unless I'm doing this.
Wow.
So that's what, yeah. And I quit Gold Spot at the time, and I stopped anything that wasn't really focused on some kind of healing, something bigger than the crowd reaction or selling music. It was a pure form, I guess, of of motivation for performing.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
an incredible transformation or transition.
Well, I'm known for changing on, drop of a dime. So I go where
Wow,
my heart tells me.
man. Well, we haven't even gotten into your current projects, and that's a phenomenal area. I'd love to dig in more on also, but I also know you have a time commitment that I need to respect for you.
Yeah.
Um, Man, if you'd be willing, I'd love to have a part two of this conversation soon,
Sure.
and keep it going. Um,
Absolutely, man.
I had no idea that that was a part of the the transition off of.
Oh yeah. Big time.
Wow, man, that is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we really had a beautiful, it was a beautiful season of ministry, man. Just life giving and raw and very unplanned. That was the most beautiful part of it. But yeah, we'll have to talk about all that at a different day. There's tons of stuff online. We did a lot of really cool projects.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'd want to hear. In addition to that, I'll take notes so I remember this next time too. But I want to hear your perspective on that whole, you know, the whole industry of music ministry, because there's so much to dive in there too. I'm sure you've got some cool perspectives, and it probably even started with some of your experience at Malibu Vineyard. Frankly, you know,
yeah. Malibu was the first time I had ever even known that you could play music at a church. Because I grew up in a Coptic Orthodox environment, church, and it's a totally different experience, completely.
yeah,
So, that was my first introduction to that
yeah.
style of church.
Yeah, and I know some of those other churches you mentioned you had exposure to in LA were, similar. Just
Yeah,
some of
very
that
similar.
worship time is just incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
very
was great,
cool.
man. It was good. We had launched when I was doing that. We had launched something, a basically a worship service in the round with no lights and kind of that type of thing. And so that space is very dear. It's very special.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I will let you go for now. I absolutely thank you for your time.
My
Um,
pleasure, man.
we'll
Thank you.
connect again if that's all right with you, because man, this is awesome. I've enjoyed it very much.
Likewise, man. It's good to see you too, Chad.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon.
All right, take care, brother.
All right, thanks, man.